Hollywood was stunned when Tom Cruise, arguably the planet's biggest action star, was thrust into a public confrontation at a high-profile Orpheus Media Gala. What was meant to be a celebratory event for investors turned into an explosive showdown that exposed a side of the streaming giant's CEO, Andrew Walsh, that many suspected but had never seen so openly. In a shocking display of arrogance, Walsh repeatedly dismissed Cruise's presence, escalating tensions until the room erupted in chaos. Industry insiders are now revealing the charged atmosphere behind the scenes and the staggering power play that led to Cruise taking center stage, not as a guest, but as a whistleblower. If you thought you knew Andrew Walsh, think again. Stay tuned and share your thoughts below as this story unveils the true character behind the facade of one of entertainment's most controversial executives. According to sources close to the event, tensions were simmering long before Cruise's dramatic entrance. He arrived at the gala in good spirits, eager to address the crowd about Orpheus Media's latest venture. Staff described him as courteous and professional, taking time to engage with organizers and thank them for accommodating his schedule. However, the mood shifted sharply when Walsh, the polished CEO, took the stage. Andrew seemed off from the moment he arrived, an event staffer, who wished to remain anonymous, confided. He barely acknowledged Tom and complained to the team about adjusting the event's flow for a non-investor. This chilly reception was just the beginning of a confrontation that would unravel into a public reckoning. The organizer, a woman with a Hollywood smile and a face taut from procedures, without a single wrinkle, neither of age nor of morals, approached him, clutching a tablet. "Mr. Cruise, I'm sorry, but you're not registered on the VIP lists. Perhaps it's some kind of misunderstanding?" Misunderstanding? Tom smirked crookedly, as if he'd heard this line in 100 scripts, but for the first time in real life. "I'm not here for the salmon canapes." She was momentarily speechless, then, almost whispering but with polished diction, "This event is for investors." "Exactly why I'm here." A flash cut through the room. One of the photographers, recognizing Cruise, dared to take a shot. In that instant, the crowd began to notice his presence. Gazes, surprised, tense, some openly wary, slowly converged on a single center of gravity. Then Andrew Walsh, the CEO of the streaming giant Orpheus Media, a man with the voice of a broadcaster and a suit worth 3 Harvard scholarships, took the stage. "Friends," he said, "today we celebrate a new era of entertainment. Thanks to your contributions, our platform has grown by 40% in a year. And most importantly, our new film Valley of Shadows," Tom suddenly started walking straight toward the stage, "has secured record-breaking pre-orders, over 300 million. This is a victory for all of us." "Victory?" Cruise's voice sliced through the room. "Then explain to me why you wrote off $28 million for a film that hasn't even been shot yet?" A murmur. Someone turned on a camera. Someone else stared into their glass. Walsh froze on stage. "Tom," he said calmly, almost paternally, "now is not the time or place to discuss creative decisions." "It's not creativity," Cruise said, raising a yellow folder. "It's a setup, and it's investment fraud. And there are people here who deserve to know." The folder landed on the stage like evidence in a courtroom. Copies of emails, expense spreadsheets, and names of shell companies spilled out. Someone in the crowd gasped, "Oh my God!" Someone else walked out. "You really think you can throw an actor overboard and write off his salary as consulting services?" Cruise leaned closer to the microphone. "I signed contracts. I read reports. And I remember." "I remember." It sounded like a verdict. "Tom," Walsh said, no longer smiling, "you've been out of the big game for a while. Maybe you just don't understand the system." "No," Cruise replied calmly. "I've studied it better than you. And I'm here to tear this game apart." The dim spots of light flickered like faces from the past. His career was dissected like an exhibit. Box office numbers, scandals, rises, and falls. But none of those present knew that the last 5 years he'd spent not on yachts but in Stanford's law library, under a pseudonym, in night classes, studying cases, analyzing financial reports, building a case against them. The United States versus Thomas Cruise. Mapother IV, the clerk announced. Charges: financial fraud, manipulation of donations, abuse of status in charitable foundations. Silence fell over the courtroom, like the calm before an earthquake. At the prosecution's table stood Dean Harrell, a star federal prosecutor known for taking down CEOs, politicians, and even two bishops. He looked like he was already celebrating victory. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before you is a man you all know, and perhaps even admire. But fame does not equal integrity. We will prove that Mr. Cruise used his status to launder funds through the August Sun charity, funneling at least $8.4 million into a private offshore structure. A pause. The projector behind him displayed a slide charting the flow of funds. The audience gasped, but Cruise didn't flinch. This was not a mistake. This was a system, Harrell concluded, built deliberately, step by step, act by act. The judge nodded. Defense, are you ready? And then Cruise stood, alone. Your Honor, I will lead my own defense. A pause. The courtroom fell into a burning silence. The judge raised an eyebrow, barely perceptible. You're waiving counsel? Yes, and I fully understand the consequences. For over 20 years, I've read contracts where every letter could cost millions. If I'm being accused of fraud, allow me to show you myself how the mechanics of trust work. Very well, Mr. Cruise, said Judge Elder. Proceed. Cruise stepped to the podium. His voice was steady, cold, without theatrics. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to look, not at me, at the numbers. The evidence the prosecution has shown you is objective, but their context is distorted. He displayed documents on the screen. One by one, slowly. He traced a line. Donation, foundation, investment fund in Singapore, a veteran housing renovation project in Michigan. Then payment orders, correspondence with auditors, architects' reports. Each document was a blow to a brick already teetering. This is what they call fraud, Tom said. This is infrastructure. This is 42 roofs that no longer leak. This is 19 medical beds that saved lives. And every dollar was documented. And the offshore accounts? The prosecutor shouted. Why those structures? To avoid corruption in the state, Mr. Harrell. You know how local contractors win bids. I sought transparency. You're chasing speculation. Silence blanketed the room again. At 1:47 p.m., during a break, Harrell stepped into the hallway, phone to his ear. Is he training at Harvard? He said. He just dismantled our case single-handedly. When the session resumed, Judge Grace watched Cruise like a teacher observing a student who suddenly spoke the language of professors. He didn't emote. He built arguments like an engineer builds a bridge, with pillars, logic, and balance. You think I'm just a face on a screen. I'm a 150-page contract. I'm a producer who invested his own money. I'm a man who learned to read between the lines because he knew between the lines lie traps. And the worst part, he added, is not that I'm being accused. It's that people trust headlines over substance, that you believe emotions over facts. And that's why the real fraudsters walk free. At 4:09 p.m., the judge called a recess for the night. The next day, witness testimony. Tom left the courtroom last. Reporters, MSNBC cameras, Fox News, and some YouTuber were waiting in the hallway. But he walked past without a glance. On the steps, a young woman, about 20, handed him a folder. I'm a law student. Can I say something? Speak, he said curtly. If you're innocent, you're the first to prove it with logic, not tears. If you're guilty, you're the most brilliant manipulator I've ever seen. Cruise looked at her for a long moment. Either way, that's no reason not to listen closely. The courtroom looked different in the morning. Cameras were closer, reporters angrier, security tighter. Outside, people weren't just waiting, they were climbing fences, watching from balconies. This wasn't a trial, it was an arena. In the lobby, someone had left a fresh copy of the New York Ledger. A bold headline on the front page. Tom Cruise, $13 million in his sister's Zurich account. Signed, Charity? Inside were scans of bank transactions. They looked authentic. A thick red arrow pointed to a payment from the August Sun Foundation. "Someone threw us a juicy bone," Harold told a CBS reporter. "And this time, he won't chew through it." Judge Elder opened the session with a sharp rap of the gavel. "Mr. Cruz, the press is not my jurisdiction, but a leak has occurred. And now you're in an even tougher position. Do you still insist on leading your own defense?" Cruz didn't flinch. "I do, and I request to call one witness, Anna Mapother, my sister." The prosecutor reacted like a shark smelling blood. "Ms. Mapother is the recipient of the suspicious transfer. This is an attempt to influence a witness." Cruz turned to the judge. "This is an attempt to show you that this leak is a fabrication, and my sister is the first who wants to prove it." At 10:37 a.m., Anna Mapother took the stand, dressed in a black suit, holding papers. "Ms. Mapother, do you have an account in Switzerland?" "Yes, opened in 2009 when I worked for the pharmaceutical company Novartis." "Did you receive $13 million from the August Sun Foundation?" She looked directly at the jury. My account was hacked. Last week, the Swiss bank informed me of an attempted unauthorized transaction, $13 million, transferred from an account in the Caymans, with a forged signature from Tom. Are you prepared to provide a letter from the bank?" "I am, and I submitted it to the prosecution yesterday." Oddly, they didn't mention it. The room buzzed. Harold was red as a tomato. He glanced back. His junior assistant was frantically typing on a tablet. Tom didn't gloat. He simply turned to the jury. "This is how public destruction works. First, an anonymous leak, then a headline, then outrage. After that, the truth doesn't matter, as long as it sticks in people's heads." Judge Elder studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Cruz, you claim the leak was fabricated? Who, in your opinion, could have done this?" Cruz took a breath. And for the first time, openly, he named a name: Howard Milton, my former agent's partner. The man who blackmailed me in 2021 when I refused to participate in a project with shady financing. I have the correspondence, his threats, his scheme. But not all at once. Howard Milton. The name dropped into the room like a gun hitting the floor of an opera house, reporters whispered. The prosecutor paled. He knew. Now he wasn't the hunter but a witness to a fire. Cruz left the courtroom with a laptop in hand. His face was cold as granite. His sister walked beside him. Her hand trembled slightly. He squeezed her fingers. "Are you ready for Milton's testimony tomorrow?" "I'm not just ready, Anna," he said. "I'm angry, and I'm preparing the most precise question of my life." The courtroom, filled with anticipation, fell silent the moment Howard Milton took the witness stand. A businessman with a dubious reputation, Milton looked confident, but a flicker of fear passed through his eyes. He knew a battle for survival was about to begin. Judge Elder looked at him sternly. "Mr. Milton, do you acknowledge that you orchestrated the fake transfer to Ms. Mapother's account to fabricate evidence against Mr. Cruz?" Milton shook his head. "That's not true. I've never engaged in fraud." Tom Cruise, standing beside his attorney, nodded and took the floor. "Mr. Milton, do you have correspondence where you personally threatened me for refusing to participate in questionable financial schemes?" Milton paled, and Cruz's attorney displayed samples of emails on the screen, with clear threats and demands. "You also made anonymous calls to the media, trying to ruin my reputation." Milton began to falter, his response uncertain, and soon he was overwhelmed by evidence. Audio recordings of calls, testimony from former employees confirming his pressure and manipulations. Other secrets unraveled too. Someone in the prosecution's inner circle had personal offshore accounts, which Tom Cruise had inadvertently uncovered and sought to bring to light. "They tried to pin the fraud label on me because I dared to stand against a system that lets people profit at others' expense," Tom said, addressing the jury. The judge called a recess, and then the jury delivered their verdict. Tom Cruise is not guilty on all charges. The room erupted in applause, and Tom gave a quiet smile. This verdict wasn't just an acquittal, it was a triumph of truth over corruption and injustice. Before leaving the courtroom, he turned to the cameras. "This wasn't just my fight. It's a fight for everyone who's been made a scapegoat for someone else's gain. Share your thoughts. What does justice mean to you in today's world? Tom Cruise stepped outside, looked up at the sun, and in his eyes burned the strength of a man who had walked through fire and emerged standing. New challenges lay ahead, but now he knew. The truth was on his side.